Thank you for staying with us on Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. We will start the program with the promotion of the INEC. Of course, we know that INEC has emphasized that politicians should not instigate violence during the general elections.
Most definitely. Mr. Bako is the Director of Media and Publicity of the Kaduna State People's Democratic Party Campaign Committee and was arrested after he was seen in a video 2 weeks ago telling a crowd at a campaign rally to, and quote, deal with whoever votes against the interests of the PDP. And joining us to discuss details of this, we have Martin Lumba, a political analyst. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have in our studio Rahman Adebi as well, the Lagos Chairman, Liberation Movement. Thank you very much.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Now, the issue, of course, David mentioned the case of Mr. Bako in Kaduna and what he was telling his supporters. I don't know if you saw that report, but then he wasn't speaking English. He was actually speaking his local language, but he was calling for war. He said, if you see anyone who doesn't want to vote for us or support our party, deal with them. Now, at this level and in this time, how far we have come as a country, do you think that this is what we should be talking about at this stage? Let me start with you, Rahman.
Yeah, I think I'm very happy that Nigerians are now seeing the difference between the old school bloc and the new school bloc. And what do I mean? Old school bloc have a lot of followership that are not educated. And the new school bloc, what we stand for is a lot of awareness, a lot of education, a lot of entrenchment of our democracy. Knowledge is key in everything you do. For, you know, if I'm permitted to recommend, I would say that man should be behind bars right now for electoral violence. Because instigation of electoral violence starts way before the election. Because if you begin to prep people, the mind is a big space. Anything you fill it into it is what will be acted out in the pre-election, during the election, and post-election. So, and the environment in which he's saying this is a volatile environment that we have recorded incident in 2011 and in 2020.
And even before Saturday Eve, yes, there was a lot of violence. We know that according to the governor of Kaduna State, about 130 people died in Kaduna in pre-election violence.
That's about 2 days before the election. So when you find that people of this nature are not sensitive, they are not politically mature, then they should be kept behind bars. That's the honest truth. And the truth is, you can't find any of the new party who came on board now with a lot of excitement, with a lot of knowledge, doing all this. It means that we as politicians, we need to invest a lot in educating our followers, educating them to the do's and the don'ts. To, you know, you need to read the riot act to them. You need them to appreciate the electoral laws that we have. Don't be a follower without knowing your rights. Don't be a follower and push a lot of people ignorantly because the people is instigating, perchance they are not educated. Because if you're educated, somebody will not come to you and begin to instigate you to pick up arms.
Martins, this isn't the first time we're having such speech flying in the air, especially when we're in a political season. And at the end of the day, these actors are not first-time political actors. They understand how body language, how oral language, how every form of communication send waves of instruction. Now, they are pretty much clear as to what they say and they are not mincing their words. How much do you think this is a threat, a ticking time bomb to the elections just a few days away?
Okay.
2 days.
The truth is, if we want to be honest about this issue of electoral violence and instigation, we must understand that it is a system thing. If an individual or a group feels frustration or feels frustrated, chances are it begins to resort to unorthodox methods. Now, the president, if we go back in history, and even up till the last statement of ruthlessness, is a sign of not panic, but frustration. How do I mean? If you say that let us go in this route. We want to follow this channel to get to a destination. And for some reason, people behave as if they have blockheads. They want to go in the opposite direction. You begin to say, okay, let us go to the law courts and then find answers to this problem. You go to the law courts, you are also faced with another barrier. You cannot get justice unless maybe you can purchase it. These frustrations are the things that begin to manifest in body language and also in the statements that come out from politicians that people now interpret as a license to, generate violence. And it is a system thing. Like he said, education will help, enlightenment will help, but the truth is, if a system is not functional properly, you will find it difficult to exercise discipline. That is the truth of the matter.
But if we were to get things right, understanding the gravity of all of these sort of statements and actions, what then should we be doing? Because we understand that inciting violence is just as much as equally causing disruption that would be much more chaotic. So what level of implementation of punitive measures do you expect? Because you also made mention of the court of law, but
yes,
you can't hold any individual just yet.
But let me just give you this instance. This issue about deal with ballot snatchers ruthlessly, I don't want to say you lose your life. Let's leave that one. That one is extreme. But ruthlessly, it sends a signal. It gives somebody the impetus. Even if you didn't want to steal a ballot box before, you didn't want to snatch. Let me paraphrase. Apostle Paul says the reason for sin is because there is a law against sin. So when you use the word ruthlessness, somehow the mindset begins to attach to that crime. Having said that, if you follow the law helps you to solve a problem in the sense that, for instance, if we kill the ballot snatcher, we know really that it is not the ballot snatcher that is the problem, but the one who sent him. Now, if you kill the snatcher, chances are you will not get the real culprit, meaning that that crime will repeat itself. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So it is a system thing.
But we are not even having a chain. Now we have the individual actors making all of these pronouncements. What should we be doing to them at this point in time?
Very good.
Talking about legal and punitive measures.
I think the first thing is for us to understand the problem, the enlightenment, the orientation. Then, of course, we must get our laws to work. If people have been saying things, more extreme things before now, I dare say that even our #1 citizen, the whole world, knows precisely his stand over certain issues. Like I said, it could be because of frustration. But having not suffered any consequence, that is why we are where we are today.
Now, if I heard you correctly, Martins, from your analysis, you're saying that the president is also guilty of this.
Overwhelmingly so.
In what sense? He made a statement about ballot box snatching, and
yes,
some people have defended him. Organizations have come out to say that the president said the right thing. So then you're saying that he shouldn't have, that it is, you're analyzing
that is not exactly what I've said, which is why I said let us avoid, or rather let me avoid the extreme statement that he made about, you will lose your life, as a consequence of snatching ballot box. I just want
instigation of violence.
Beautiful, which is why I said if you use the word ruthless in a democracy, it is suggestive. It gives you the appetite to want to commit that crime. That is just the way it is.
Instead of it being a deterrent, because if you are being
it cannot be a deterrent.
It's actually an inspiration. X, Y, Z, you are going to be punished for it. So you think instead, the innate nature is rather to say,
for instance, like I said, the culprit is actually not the ballot snatcher, but the one in whose name he has come. Do you understand?
And that is usually the higher mighty.
Again, can I tell you something? Let me shock you. The truth is, they say that the best form of defense is attack. For instance, I'm going somewhere. Now, I know for a fact that in Uganda, before now, the former head of state called Idi Amin, he did something. And what was that thing? It was so appalling. He said that because he had been getting intelligence that Milton Obote, the former leader of Uganda, living in Tanzania, was planning some kind of insurgency, so to say, against his government. What did he do to prove that, you know, Obote had gone to the extreme? What he did was so shocking. He took Ugandan soldiers and dressed them in Tanzanian uniform and got them killed at the border. He took a British journalist to say that, no, I know this face. And when the investigation was carried out, it turned out they were all Ugandans. I have said something, which means that if somebody comes and makes a statement, I don't want this kind of thing to happen. If you try it, I will deal with you. It could have more weighty, you know, implication than we're trying to address.
Let me bring you in here, Martins. We also know that way before the rescheduled election was to take place, the United States and the UK had issued a statement with the effect that those who incite violence and politicians in Nigeria who stand for what they shouldn't stand for are going to face the full weight of the law in the UK and the US. Precisely, there was a statement by a British official to the effect that their assets would be freezed and that they could even be prosecuted. To what extent would such statement from a foreign country go to deter those who intend to instigate violence? Because we haven't seen the lasts. Of course, we know we haven't even held one election. So do you think that that is also a potent force that could stop politicians who intend to instigate violence?
Thank you very much. I think at the moment, the international community is concerned about Nigeria. And the first statement is they're going to deny any politician who instigates violence, participates, or involved. They're going to deny them visa to the UK, to the US, and I think to some European countries, because they know that they all have assets in those countries. That's number one. Number two is that, and that is a deterrent. That is so that you don't instigate violence in a country and you run to another country as for safe havens. Because the people in which you have instigated do not have anywhere to run to. They only have Nigeria to run to. That's number one. Then number two is that the international community has a lot to play. The same way Nigeria has a lot to play when it comes to elections of other African countries. Because with the weight of the United Nations, with the weight of countries who are powerful in the world, you get aid from them when you are challenged by diseases. You get funding from them when disaster ravage you. When it comes to your politics, your stability ensures that they are stable in their own country. We've seen the outcome of Syria. If Syria has been stabilized the way we are trying to stabilize Nigeria, there won't be outcome of war, and the whole world will not be at mess as we are finding ourselves. So the international community need to do more. They've signed the peace accord, between the two leading parties and other political parties, because all these measures is to forestall any form of violence. Because the violence in Nigeria, it begins with voice. Violence in Nigeria begins with the posture of the person delivering the message.
So how do we then tell if somebody is instigating violence if of course, we know body language can also send a message to followers? It's not just about what you say. Sometimes the posturing, some people are even too quick to act because they believe this is what our principal would expect us to do. So they don't even need him to talk. So how do you think that the foreign observers would even read the mannerisms?
The things that we should have done before now, which I always put on the doorstep of Nigerian Orientation Agency, is that pre the election, 1 year to the election, for us to have a balanced and mature democracy, orientation of every Nigerian should have gone into play. Because it takes a lot for somebody to come and destabilize an informed mind. Because there's a statement that if you are not informed, you are deformed. Most of these people are not informed. So they lack the education as to the electoral process. That's number one. Our electoral laws, if not for elites, do you understand, and the media that is trying to bring some of them to the fore, how many Nigerians are familiar with the electoral law? people just hear the name electoral law. What are the conditions? What are the clauses? What are the punishments that you have there?
But an empty stomach doesn't want to read.
It's not, yeah, if they do not want to read, they can hear. Interpret it in all the Nigerian languages that we can, that we all hear. And, you know, push it down there for people to listen to. Because all these will begin to forestall and help our democracy grow. Those people we're talking about that they don't read, that they are illiterate, they are the major electorate. Because the literacy level in Nigeria is so low that the bulk of the people who are going to vote are illiterate or semi-illiterate. So they need to be enlightened, they need to be educated. And the bulk of solving this electoral violence and instigation is when by the time you finish enlightening them and you tell them this is what is required of you, then you come down and come sternly on the politicians, especially in those regions of the country that are sensitive to violence and everything. Because
the flashpoints.
The major flashpoint. Look at Kaduna, for instance. I'm happy that the governor is taking back the word of the body bags. Do you understand?
But here it's already out there.
Yeah, so. But it's uncalled for. Do you understand? When you have a posture of a governor of a state using such words, do you understand? You question yourself and ask yourself, what's going on in his mind that is making him to utter such statement? Do you understand? And a lot of people have been instigating. See, one thing I've found about Nigerians in the political season is they use that opportunity to throw a lot of bad blood around. They divide the people religiously, tribal, according to tribal lines, and a lot of divisions they set in motion. And the question is, are we set for war in Nigeria, or are we set to enshrine democracy and grow our country?
That's the question.
Now, Martins, despite the divides that we know politicians explore, religious, ethnic, and whatever you name it, but at the end of the day, don't you expect that as a growing democracy, the electorate, whether you are illiterate or not, you should have an understanding that first and foremost, we are all individuals, we are all Nigerians, and we should expect that we treat each other fairly beyond party politics? How do you think then this do or die affair or this partisan politics helps to fuel this level of instigation of violence? Because you can't say these masses are puppets in the hands of individuals. You could actually throw out these words and they wouldn't take action if they have a sound understanding that we are dealing with human beings, not just the enemy.
Okay, like I said earlier, the truth is when people hear or experience inconclusive election, for instance, and they were witnesses to what transpired, you know, they lose faith in the possibility of getting credible elections, for instance. And because this has continued to happen over time, consistently, it becomes very difficult, you know, for people to build trust and bonding. For instance, if the mistake, you know, in a process is caused by a Yoruba man, they will take it that Yorubas don't want us to move forward. Do you understand? If a mistake is caused by a Hausa man or an Ijaw man, it's the same thing. But if the system begins to address some of these things, and usually for a system to function properly, you must have standards.
But where lies the human face then? At the end of the day, if you're told to harm your neighbor, how do you carry such an act if you're staring in the face of the other person and you don't see a human face, you don't have a conscience, you don't have a heart?
Why do drugs sell? Drugs sell because each person that wants to carry out evil knows that this thing that he or she wants to do is bad. But because he wants to find a way to shield his conscience, he goes and takes drug. Now, the argument for, or if you like, the motivation for wanting to carry out that thing is, again, like I said, once you don't address a system to be able to build that bonding and the trust, this is the fallout that you get. And for me, I am insisting that there is no human being who will drive a car, I didn't say tricycle now, with 3 tires. It's impossible. You must build standards. If the sun does not shine tomorrow morning, all of us will feel unsafe. But because it is a standard, we're used to it. Now Nigeria has to consistently build on a progressive path. We have to ensure that this inconclusive nonsense ends from this particular exercise. And by that I also mean that whether you have a challenge of logistics or what have you, for instance, I give you a very simple analogy. Within INEC, they have somebody in charge of logistics. Why would you now go and set up a committee and you bring external people to carry, and this is the flop that we have in our hands. So for a system to function properly, you must have your standards, you must have your specifications. If the measurement you need for a particular thing is 6 meters, if you do 7 meters, you're going to have a problem.
Okay, now how do you think all of the words that have been thrown out there, we've looked at the Kaduna State Governor releases words, we've looked at that of Mr. Bako, we've heard that of the President, we've looked at that from the PDP and a whole lot more. How do you think this would also affect the playout of the elections as well? Do you think the average Nigerian going out there would be apprehensive this time around, or it is I fight you, you fight me back kind of situation we would have?
I think there's an improvement. Sorry, I think there's an improvement. By that I mean, it takes a very conscious man to say, you know what, bring the gari, bring the rice, no problem, but I'm still going to vote my conscience. That is where we have gotten to. You see people say, yes, I spent a lot of money, I wasted my time traveling. Like myself, I returned on Friday so that I'll be able to vote on Saturday. It doesn't matter. Nigerians are very determined in these elections, and that is a ray of hope for us. And I think over time we will improve.
Okay, now I would like to ask you this, Rahman. How have all of this that's been thrown out in the political arena affected the average Nigerian in terms of the propensity to vote this time around? We know we've been battling voter apathy and lots of issues. Lots of people traveled last week, but then they couldn't vote, and now, like he said, he's having to come back to vote. So how would it affect the already tense system that we have on our hands?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Nigerian electorates are more determined and more resolute. Yes, people had lost money, people are disappointed in the postponement, but the excuse or the rationale for the postponement, we're beginning to see the rationale, and we're beginning to see evidence to the rationale. So it's making Nigerians feel more comfortable in terms of the credibility of the election. Of course, it's all about the credibility of the election, because what we want is a free, fair, and credible election. And when you have that, it means that the system becomes total. And like I said before, for democracy to grow, you need the electorate to come out en masse and vote.
Okay.
And
now, let me also add this. You know, of course, that instigation of violence is an electoral offense. Yeah. And then there are penalties. The Electoral Act actually stipulates all that. Also, against what the president said about ballot box snatchers, the INEC chairman, Yakubu, had come out to say that they will be dealt with within the ambit of the law. Whoever goes against the law will have to face the law. That's what he said. Yes. And we're hoping that that should be what would happen, because the security operatives, according to the president, he already mobilized them to be ruthless. But we are hoping that the law would take its course, because the rule of law is supreme any day. Now, what level of enforcement do you expect this time around? We've seen people who instigate violence go scot-free. Sometimes they come back to apologize and say, oh, I didn't mean that. Oh, it was misinterpreted. But then if anybody is caught in the act this time around, what do you expect to be done?
Do you, pardon me to digress a little bit. Of course, you know, taking us a little bit back. When the president addressed and spoke those words, it was to who? It was to his party men, of course, and in turn to the generality of Nigerian. It's a big message he's sending internally and then externally. And we could see the reaction of the external generality of Nigerians to that statement. When he was talking, he was facing his party men and said, I have done my bit in terms of campaigning. Anybody that goes against this will be ruthlessly dealt with. That, you know, in a logical sense, is to the people in which he's facing.
But he was on national television, so...
Correct. But that's the platform in which he was facing. That's number one. Number two is that the fallout of that is democracy and rule of law is sacrosanct. The choice of words of a president might be wrong, but the truth of the matter is 10 warning need to be sounded in the minds of every Nigerian, because the deciding destiny of Nigeria is now, and we need to collectively, from Mr. President even to the chief in the village, should to be sounding the same warning, the way the president sounded his warning. Of course, not on the to violate the rule of law, but everybody down the line, to the head of the family at home, need to sound the similar warning across board, so that we can have a civilized society.
Okay, what do you think would play out if anyone, even though the president had strengthened and all that?
What I know will play out is this. The president has sounded his own warning, and INEC has come to say the electoral violence is going to be punished according to the law. I see a massive picking of human beings who become disgruntled. If by chance they put Black Marias in a close range to every polling unit, it will not be far-fetched, because Nigerians we need that discipline to get it right the first time, so that we can continuously get it right. And then when they are caught, the law immediately takes its course.
Now, I would also want Martins to react to that from your vantage position. What do you see playing out?
Well, by Saturday, I expect that people will be more conformed, more disciplined, and, if you like, better regulated. Not necessarily because of the statement, because I know for one that by our nature, when somebody threatens you, the reaction is usually to, who does this guy feel he is? No matter who you are, whether you're the president or not. The truth is, there's been a sequence of events. The National Assembly passed, the electoral amendment bill and sent to Mr. President 4 times, rejected. My interpretation of that action is that, of course, that was the threshold. That was the instigation. For me, I'm speaking as Martins Lumba now. Having said that, the other thing is, when you talk about Black Marias, like you said, I think that is very far-fetched. The truth is that as Nigerians, even amongst ourselves, if somebody attempts to snatch the ballot box, chances are, because of the determination of Nigerians in this election, on their own, they will be able to apprehend that person. If you see where Nigerians are determined, whether it's following a football match or the career of a politician or whatever, anywhere you see Nigerians determined, they can actually find solutions to the challenges that face them. And I expect that to play out on Saturday. However, going back to what I said from the beginning, if the system does not encourage you, chances are you feel frustrated and you begin to see all of these fallouts that we're complaining about. The truth is, if you have transparent leadership, you're going to have, if you like, honest citizens. Let me put it that way. The truth is, it's all about cause and effect. If the leadership is misleading the people, you're definitely going to have citizens that are very unruly, very stubborn. But Nigerians are very easy people to go. But there's one other point I want to make. Coming back to this same issue of Black Maria and what have you. The truth is, if you pick the person at the polling unit, like I said before, that is not the guilty party. The guilty party is the person who sent him or in whose name he has acted. And the truth is, we must be able to apprehend those people. And that is where a system works properly.
Do you mean that the person is not alone in guilt? Because
very true.
Yes,
very true.
Of
That's
course,
precisely.
yes, there can be levels of guilt in that sense.
Now, still talking about the way forward now, what lessons do you expect we should have learned from 2015 and expect to see play out now this time around in 2019? You've also made mention of the electoral bill as amended, which is supposed to have received the presidential assent. How do you think this will also determine the level of implementation and ensure that we don't have instigation of violence as a threat when we are talking about 2023?
Yes, sorry, can you take that last part?
What lessons should we have learned from 2015?
Okay, the lesson from 2015 coming into 2019 is, first, we need to respect ourselves as Nigerians.
Because we remember that it's not just the first time we're having
the election is not worth the
elections.
blood of any Nigerian. That's the first level lesson we've learned. We're learning and we have learned. That peace is sacrosanct. That we must become sportsmanship in politics. We must be able to accept defeat. And then if we are aggrieved, we must be able to learn to go through the courts. The rule of law is, must take its course. Then next to it is we must now see that elections is a civic responsibility that we do not need to put in so much money into to be able to perform when you have done what is needed. When you've done the right build-up to the elections, as a government in power that you want to retain power, as people who are coming to power, a lot of work needs to have been done. You understand? So our elections need to become less expensive, because that is part of what we're taking out of this election now. And then the fallout is everybody in Nigeria must see that performing your civic responsibility during the election, is very key to making our democracy a strong, vibrant, and an enviable democracy in Africa that the whole of Africa is looking forward to.
Martins, we are still at baby steps when we are talking about the practice of democracy. We can't even compare ourselves to the USA and other advanced climes. But like the first question I threw out there to Raman, what other levels or areas or scopes should we also have taken cues from and ensure that we make practicable so that we can then say we have built on a level that seems to work?
Okay, you had asked him what lessons, we could have learned or might have learned from 2015. Now, here's the thing. The truth is, I wouldn't know whether we have really made progress from 2015 or if we have retrogressed from 2015. Because 2015 was a watershed. We introduced a number of reforms. And of course, we used the card reader. And of course, again, the world applauded. And we as citizens, we also applauded. Now, if by 2018, or in fact, all of the elections leading to this 2019, from Edo, Ekiti, mind you, in Edo, at some point they were collating results and all of a sudden the lights went out and they said, let's call it a day. The generators won't work and all of that. It's a big problem. The truth is, we all know the hidden agenda of some of these politicians. And we choose not to talk about these things, and it's not helping us. For instance, talking about electoral violence and instigation, for instance, that the Chief of Army Staff has just said people asking the army or the military, as a matter of fact, to disobey orders is unfortunate. That is a very weighty statement to come from the Chief of Army Staff. What was he saying? The president has said something about going the extreme, about being ruthless. They are likely to obey. But the truth is that under democratic norms, you look at your constitution, you look at the laws of the land, and you obey only those things that are in consonance with the laws of the land. But if your chief is now saying that, if they are being called to disobey, it is unfortunate, I don't know how to interpret that. That is one side. The other side, of course, is that if you look at the fight against corruption, I don't know if that fight is being fought holistically, which means that if it is not being fought holistically, we're likely to face the same challenge when it comes to electoral violence. I'm saying this because in Kano State, about 950 people have been arrested. These 950 people, we need to screen them and be able to say to the world that, okay, these are miscreants, these are bandits, these are whatever. But chances are, they all belong to the opposition.
So in your stance, we are selective on how we address some of these?
Most likely. And my stance is that we have not made progress. We have not made progress. If anything, we have retrogressed. And it's a very, very big challenge. As serious citizens, we must take this issue very, very, very seriously. It is incumbent on Nigerians to speak truth to power. We must be able to challenge the authorities to say, look, the way you are taking Nigeria, I bet you, look, for instance, a place like Uganda, sorry to say, but just yesterday, I want to believe, they said that they are giving their president another term. He is making 40 years on that throne. If we allow some of these things to escape our challenge, chances are we're going to have that kind of scenario in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for your time,
God forbid.
Martin Slumba. Thank you very much for your contributions. We've been speaking with Martin Slumba, a political analyst. Thank you very much. And we also have been talking with Rahman Adebi, the Lagos chairman, Liberation Movement Party. Thank you very much for your contribution. Well, it's time to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the SSS backing down on arresting some top INEC officials. Don't go anywhere.